everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Nina, and today I'm going to be giving you some recommendations for audiobooks. As for my credentials, I have now read, according to Libby, around 90 audiobooks since I first started in the fall of 2021. And I wanted to talk about some of my favorites since I think audiobooks can really enhance the reading experience. I also think if you say you want to read more but don't have a lot of free time, they are a great alternative to physical books. I listen to audiobooks when I'm on my commute, at the gym, or doing mindless household chores. Any pocket of time where I think I could get a little bit of reading in. This is a list of books where I think the narrators are really doing a great job at bringing the story to life. And I think because I read them as audiobooks, I was able to connect with the stories in a really special way that I don't know I would have been able to have the same reaction to if I had just read them physically. Audiobook narrating is a lot like being a voice actor, and you have to be a good actor for it to work well. So all of these ones are books where I think the narrator is doing God's work in setting the tone for all of the characters they voice in the book. So without further ado, let's get into the video. I'm going to be dividing this video into young adult, new adult, and adult audiobooks, and I'll have timestamps linked for those sections down below. The first section we are going to be talking about is young adult, and the first one I wanted to mention is The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, which is written by Mackenzie Lee and narrated by Christian Coulson. This is a YA historical fantasy romance that follows our main character Monty, who is an English nobleman going on a tour across Europe. A lot of hijinks ensue, and it's just so much fun. This was actually the very first audiobook I had ever read, and I was so lucky that I got a good one. This book is one of my favorite books of all time. And one of the reasons why I say this book is one of my favorites is in part from the narrator, Christian Coulson. He's also a movie actor. He played Tom Riddle in the Harry Potter series back when he was way younger. And because I like this book so much, I've seen a lot of interviews with him. And it seems like he really loves Monty as a character. And he cares a lot about the story, which I feel like makes it even more special. The next series I wanted to talk about is the first 3 books in the Abhorsen series, which is written by Garth Nix and narrated by the legend Tim Curry. This is a YA fantasy series that focuses on necromancy and this familial line of necromancers called the Abhorsen, who stop things coming out of death and wreaking havoc on the living world. Obviously, with such an iconic actor who's known for a lot of dramatic character work, leads to the first 3 books in the series having really great audiobooks. I think what I love most about his narration is I actually only read the last book as an audiobook. The first 2 I had read physically, and I had my own ideas for how the characters would sound, and his interpretation is so different, but also so correct and refreshing to hear. The next YA fantasy series I wanted to talk about is the Folk of the Air series, written by Holly Black and narrated by Caitlin Kelly. This is a YA fantasy series about a human girl named Jude who is living in the Fae world, and the very tumultuous relationship she has with one of the Fae princes named Cardin. And there was also a lot of larger political intrigue regarding the entire royal family. I feel like Caitlin Kelly did such a great job portraying emotion and the intensity of scenes, which is really needed for a book like The Cruel Prince. She also has a really good boy voice, which is something I really like to look for in female audiobook narrators. And I feel like all of her boy voices sound so different. Like the voice that she does for Jude's dad, Maddox, is so different from the one that she has for Cardin. And I feel like that just helps show her range as a voice actress. Okay, the next series I wanted to talk about is the Hunger Games trilogy, which is written by Suzanne Collins. But there are actually 2 different versions of the audiobooks for this series. The first one was done by Carolyn McCormick, and I do like it. It was the first version that I listened to. There was also a second version that was done by Tatiana Malsany, and I didn't actually know who she was when I listened to the books, but upon doing research for this video, I did find out that she's also a movie actress, who I recognize most from being She-Hulk in the most recent TV show. I like them both for different reasons. Honestly, one very iconic one is specifically in Mockingjay, and that is the fact that the melody for The Hanging Tree is different from the way it is portrayed in the movies. The original audiobook came out in 2010, which is obviously before the movies came out, but the second edition of the audiobooks came out in 2018, which was post-Mockingjay movie, but it's still very different from the movie melody. I just love all of the differences, and I think it's really cool to see so many different interpretations of this story. Okay, the last YA series I wanted to talk about is the Caraval series, as well as the Once Upon a Broken Heart series, which are both written by Stephanie Garber and are both narrated by Rebecca Soler. Honestly, this is kind of a general category for pretty much anything Rebecca Soler narrates. Both Caraval and Once Upon a Broken Heart are YA fantasy romance series that are set in the same universe. They're very much relationship and vibes first, with a plot that's more able to bend to the will of whatever the vibes call for. I think Rebecca Soler is really great. I feel like she's also really good at portraying emotion and the intensity of scenes. I think she's a little bit better in Caraval. I feel like she's able to flex her talent a little bit more there, given the structure of the story and all the different characters that she's playing. But I can see her being good in pretty much any of series that she's done. She also has a very large backlist of audiobooks that I haven't listened to, and she used to be a voice actor in Yu-Gi-Oh!, which automatically makes me like her more. Okay, now I wanted to move into my like new adult / older YA category. And the first one on that list is probably another one of my like all-time favorite audiobooks. And that is Belladonna, written by Adeline Grace and narrated by Kristen Atherton. This is a YA fantasy romance series that follows our main character Signa, who has to team up with the personification of death to solve the mystery of her aunt's murder. Kristen Atherton is probably my favorite audiobook narrator. She truly is like a goddess among men and really just narrates everything above and beyond. Obviously, when you're an audiobook narrator, you're playing all of the roles, and I really love it when narrators can create different tones of voice for all of the characters in the story, to the point where I can't really believe they're being played by the same person. And that is something she does really well. I feel like all of her voices are so distinct and also believable, like no one is cartoonish in their vocal performance, if that makes sense. Kristen Atherton is so good at her job. Her boy voice, like literally, I did not believe it was her when I was first listening to this book. I was like, oh, is there a dual narrator who's voicing all of the guys? No, it's just her being a badass. The next series I wanted to talk about is the Divine Rivals duology, which is written by Rebecca Ross and dual narrated by Alex Winfield and Rebecca Norfolk. This is a fantasy historical romance series which follows two journalists that are able to communicate with each other using magical typewriters. I really do love a good co-narrated book, and I just generally enjoy this one. I think both sides are really well cast and very believable in their roles. Okay, the last one in this category is actually a book series that I didn't enjoy the content, but I think that the audiobooks are really well done, and that is the Kingdom of the Wicked series, which is written by Carrie Maniscalco and narrated by Marissa Kalin. Again, I don't like these books, but oh my god, the production of them is insane. I believe the post-production editor was Gabino Reyes, and he absolutely killed it, dude. I do have to say in general, audiobook credits are sometimes hard to find online. I was having the hardest time finding out who the producer and the audio engineer on these books was, which I know they like say out verbally at the end of the audiobook, but it's not like listed anywhere on like the audiobook pages online, which I honestly find kind of rude. People should be given credit where credit is due. Anyway, going on to like the production of these books and why I love them so much. There's a lot of like inset music to set the tone. The intros of the second and third book have this like layered audio, almost like recapping the story that honestly gets you so hyped when you're reading them. Overall, it just has a very like cinematic feel. So even though I don't really like these books content-wise, I think if you are interested in them, listening to them as an audiobook is the premier reading experience. Okay, now we are into our last category, which is adult audiobooks. The first one in this category is The Silence of the Girls, written by Pat Barker, which is also narrated by Kristen Atherton. I like this for the same reasons I gave before for Belladonna, but also extra points here because there is a song included in the book that Kristen Atherton sings and absolutely kills it. But then this book is also co-narrated by a guy, and he just like kind of fucking whiffs it and just reads it out like it's a poem. And I feel like just really highlights how above and beyond Kristen Atherton is willing to go to perform. Next book in this category is A Dowry of Blood, written by S.T. Gibson and narrated by Abby Creighton. This is an adult historical fantasy that follows the three brides of Dracula. It's written as an epistolary story of one of the brides telling her entire life story to a now deceased Dracula. And it's kind of like a why done it for why she ended up killing her husband. This is my first time listening to an audiobook narrated by Abby Creighton, and she really killed it. Her voice for Dracula is so good. Another really good like boy voice portrayal that really helps like show his character and what makes him so alluring. There's apparently another version of this audiobook that is done by Kristen Atherton, and I would probably die on the spot if I ended up listening to it. Next book I wanted to talk about is The Shadow of the Wind, which is written by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. And in particular, I wanted to talk about the version that is narrated by Jonathan Davis. Again, this is an audiobook that has amazing production. There will be like little piano interludes to break up certain scenes and set the mood. I really like Jonathan Davis's portrayal. I think that he does really good character voices for everyone. The only problem I had with this one specifically is for some reason the Libby copy that I had like wasn't properly formatted, so it wouldn't have any like actual breaks for the chapters. It kind of would randomly break up the flow at random points and not on the starts of chapters. So depending on where you read this, it might be a little glitchy, but obviously that's not like the audiobook narrator's fault. Next series I wanted to mention is the Locktomb series, which is written by Tamsin Marir and narrated by Moira Quirk. This is an adult sci-fantasy hybrid series that follows a bunch of lesbian necromancers in space. Similarly to a lot of other people on this list, I really like Moira Quirk's portrayal of all the characters. She does a lot of different like accents for all of the different members of the houses, which I feel like helps like really like differentiate everyone, especially with such a large cast like this. Making everyone sound so distinct is really helpful in being able to follow the story. Moira Clark is also the narrator of the second book in the Gentleman's Guide series, and I really liked her portrayal there, but I feel like in a book like this is where she really shines. Next book we are going to be talking about is The Secret History, which is written by Donna Tartt and also narrated by Donna Tartt. This book is a dark academia staple about a group of ancient Greek students at this private college where one of their members of their cohort is killed, and it's basically a big whodunit of everything that went down before and after his death. I think there's something to be said about that special feeling when an author narrates their own book, because you get to look into how the author thinks the characters sound in a very deep way. I feel like having an audiobook for this also really helps so much of the humor in The Secret History, since it's done in a very dry line delivery. And also the kind of like quirky voice that Donna Tartt uses for the character Bunny is both obviously so telling for how she sees him as a character, but I also think it helps take the edge off of some of his more like obvious flaws and offensive things he says, since you can't really take him seriously. Okay, the last book I wanted to include in this video is actually a nonfiction book, and that is Word Slut by Amanda Montell, which is also narrated by Amanda Montell. This is a book that combines sociolinguistics with feminism in talking about the different ways that we encode gender into our way of speaking. Not only is this book amazing, but again, it's an author narrating their own book, which makes it even more special. I also think it makes sense for a book that is about language and linguistics to be consumed as an audiobook to like fully hear what is being discussed in action. So that is a look at some of my favorite audiobooks. I think any of these are a great place to start if you're looking for an audiobook to try out. And also pretty much every audiobook I talked in this video is one that you can find through your local library, and I primarily read through using Libby. So I hope that encourages you to try Libby out for yourself. It's really important to support local libraries in any way you can, and I think they have such a great wealth of resources, including audiobooks as one of them. But that is going to be it from me today. If you guys like this video, please consider liking, commenting, or subscribing if you aren't already. If you'd like to see my reading updates in real time, I'll have my story graph linked in the description. And that is going to be it from me. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!